Hi everyone, this is Global Travel Channel. Today I will tell about Switzerland. Switzerland is a small mountainous country located in Central Europe. This landlocked country is about the size of New Jersey and is between Liechtenstein, France and Italy. It is also bordered by Austria, Germany, and most of the population lives in the plateau which is between the high Alps in the south and the Jura Mountains in the north. The mountainous area in the south is sparsely populated. Switzerland is one of the world's wealthiest countries. The Swiss are well known for their watches and clocks. There is not a single official language in Switzerland. People speak one of several languages, including Swiss German, French, and Italian. The Swiss Alps are high, snow-covered mountains, most of which are over 13,000 feet, 4,000 meters. The most famous peak is the Matterhorn, which is 14,692 feet, 4,478 meters, tall, but the highest peak is Dufferspitz at 15,203 feet, 4,634 meters. Scientists are concerned that glaciers in the Swiss Alps have lost a lot of ice coverage in the past 40 years. This may be related to global climate change. Rapid melting of the glaciers could cause flooding to the villages below. Most animals in Switzerland live in the mountains. The ibex, a species of mountain goat, was hunted to near extinction in the early 1800s. The species has since been reintroduced and more than 15,000 ibex now live in the Swiss Alps. Hikers may also encounter chamois, another goat-like animal, and marmots. The forests of Switzerland are also home to deer, rabbits, foxes, badgers, squirrels, and many bird species. The country is made up of 26 cantons or states, which form the confederation. The leader of the government is the president. Both the president and vice president are elected by the Federal Assembly from the Federal Council. They serve a term. Elections are usually held in December. Representatives of the cantons are elected to the Assembly for 4-year terms. Switzerland was formed in 1291 as a union of 3 states and became an independent country in 1815. The constitution, adopted in 1848, does not allow for troops to be sent to serve in foreign wars. The country has remained neutral in conflicts around the world, including both world wars. Switzerland did not become a member of the United Nations until 2002, and is not a member of the European Union. Let's talk about more history of Switzerland. Since 1848, the Swiss Confederation has been a federal state of relatively autonomous cantons, some of which have a history of confederacy that goes back more than 700 years, putting them among the world's oldest surviving republics. The early history of the region is tied to that of Alpine culture. Switzerland were regions, and it came under Roman rule in the 1st century BC. Gallos inhabited by Gauls, and Roman culture was amalgamated with Germanic influence during late antiquity, with the eastern part of Switzerland becoming Alemannic territory. The area of Switzerland was incorporated into the Frankish Empire in the 6th century. In the High Medieval period, the eastern part became part of the Duchy of Swabia within the Holy Roman Empire, while the western part was part of Burgundy. The Old Swiss Confederacy in the late medieval period, the 8 cantons, established its independence from the House of Habsburg and the Duchy of Burgundy, and in the Italian Wars gained territory south of the Alps from the Duchy of Milan. The Swiss Reformation divided the Confederacy and resulted in a drawn-out history of internal strife between the 13 cantons in the early modern period. In the wake of the French Revolution, Switzerland fell to a French invasion in 1798 and was reformed into the Helvetic Republic, a French client state. Napoleon's Act of Mediation in 1803 restored the status of Switzerland as a confederation, and after the end of the Napoleonic period, the Swiss Confederation underwent a period of turmoil culminating in a brief civil war in 1847 and the creation of Constitution in 1848. The history of Switzerland since 1848 has been largely one of success and prosperity. Industrialization transformed the traditionally agricultural economy, and Swiss neutrality during the World Wars and the success of the banking industry furthered the ascent of Switzerland to its status as one of the world's most stable economies. Switzerland signed a free trade agreement with the European Economic Community in 1972, and has participated in the process of European integration by way of bilateral treaties, but it has notably resisted full accession to the European Union, EU, even though its territory has been surrounded by European Union member states since 1995. As a consequence of the Civil War, Switzerland adopted a federal constitution in 1848. amending it extensively in 1874 and establishing federal responsibility for defense, trade, and legal matters, leaving all other matters to the cantonal governments. From then, and over much of the 20th century, continuous political, economic, and social improvement has characterized Swiss history. While Switzerland was primarily rural, the cities experienced an industrial revolution in the late 19th century, focused especially on textiles. In Basel, for example, textiles, including silk, were the leading industry. In 1888, women made up 44% of the wage earners. Nearly half the women worked in the textile mills, with household servants the second largest job category. The share of women in the workforce was higher between 1890 and 1910 than it was in the late 1960s and 1970s. Swiss universities in the late 19th century are notable for the number of female students receiving medical education. World Wars, 19,141,945, the major powers respected Switzerland's neutrality during World War I. In the Grimm-Hoffmann affair, the Allies denounced a proposal by one politician to negotiate peace on the Eastern Front. They wanted the war there to continue so as to tie Germany down. While the industrial sector began to grow into the most prosperous nations in Europe, mid-19th century, Switzerland's emergence as one of the Swiss miracle was the development of the short 20th century, among other things tied to the role of Switzerland during the world wars. During World War II, Germany considered invading, but never attacked. Under General Enriquez, the Swiss army prepared for mass mobilization of militia forces against invasion, and prepared strong, well-stockpiled positions high in the Alps known as the Redoute. Switzerland remained independent and neutral through a combination of military deterrence, economic concessions to Germany, and good fortune as larger events during the war delayed an invasion. Attempts by Switzerland's small Nazi party to cause an Anschluss with Germany failed miserably, largely due to Switzerland's multicultural heritage, strong sense of national identity, and long tradition of direct democracy and civil liberties. The Swiss press vigorously criticized the Third Reich citation needed, often infuriating German leaders. Switzerland was an important base for espionage by both sides in the conflict and often mediated communications between the Axis and Allied powers. Switzerland's trade was blockaded by both the Allies and by the Axis. Both sides openly exerted pressure on Switzerland not to trade with the other. Economic cooperation and extension of credit to the Third Reich varied according to the perceived likelihood of invasion, and the availability of other trading partners. Concessions reached the zenith after a crucial rail link through Vichy France was severed in 1942, leaving Switzerland completely surrounded by the Axis. Switzerland relied on trade for half of its food and essentially all of its fuel, but controlled vital transit. Alpine rail tunnels between Germany and Switzerland's most important exports during the war were precision machine tools, watches, jewel bearings, used in bomb sites, electricity, and dairy products. During World War II, the Swiss franc was the only remaining major freely convertible currency in the world, and both the Allies and the Germans sold large amounts of gold to the Swiss National Bank. Between 1940 and 1945, the German Reichsbank sold 1.3 billion francs worth of gold to Swiss banks in exchange for Swiss francs and other foreign currency. Hundreds of millions of francs worth of this gold was monetary gold plundered from the central banks of occupied countries. 581,000 francs of Melma gold taken from Holocaust victims in Eastern Europe was sold to Swiss SS banks. In total, trade between Germany and Switzerland contributed about 0.5% to the German war effort but did not significantly lengthen the war. Over the course of the war, Switzerland interned 300,000 refugees. 104,000 of these were foreign troops interned according to the rights and duties of neutral powers outlined in the Hague Conventions. The rest were foreign civilians and were either interned or granted tolerance or residence permits by the cantonal authorities. Refugees were not allowed to hold jobs. 60,000 of the refugees were civilians escaping persecution by the Nazis. Of these, 26,000 to 27,000 were Jews. Between 10,000 and 25,000 civilian refugees were refused entry. At the beginning of the war, Switzerland had a Jewish population of between 18,000 and 28,000 and a total population of about 4 million. Within Switzerland at the time of the conflict there was moderate polarization. Some were pacifists. Some took sides according to international capitalism or international communism. Others aligned more towards their language group, with some in French-German areas more pro-speaking areas more pro-Allied, and some in Swiss Axis. The government attempted to thwart the activities of any individual, party, or faction in Switzerland that acted with extremism or attempted to break the unity of the nation. The Swiss German-speaking areas moved linguistically further away from the standard, High German spoken in Germany, with more emphasis on local Swiss dialects. In the 1960s, significant controversy arose among historians regarding the nation's relations with Nazi. By the 1990s, the controversies included a class Holocaust era bank accounts. The government commissioned an action lawsuit brought in New York over Jewish assets in authoritative study of Switzerland's interaction with the Nazi regime. The final report by this independent panel of international scholars, known as the Bergier Commission 31, was issued in 2002. History after 1945. During the Cold War, Swiss authorities considered the construction of a Swiss nuclear bomb. 32. Leading nuclear physicists at the Federal Institute of Technology Zurich such as Paul Scherrer made this a realistic possibility. However, financial problems with the defense budget prevented the substantial funds from being allocated, and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty of 1968 was seen as a valid alternative. All remaining plans for building nuclear weapons were dropped by 1988. 33. From 1959, the Federal Council, elected by the Parliament, is composed of members of the four major parties: the Protestant Free Democrats, the Catholic Christian Democrats, the left and the right-wing Social Democrats wing People's Party, essentially creating a system without a sizable parliamentary opposition. Democracy. See concordance system, reflecting the powerful position of an opposition in a direct. In 1963, Switzerland joined the Council of Europe. In 1979, parts of the Canton of Bern attained independence, forming the new Canton of Jura. Switzerland's role in many United Nations and international organizations helped to mitigate the country's concern for neutrality. In 2002, Switzerland voters gave 55% of their vote in favor of the UN and joined the United Nations. This followed decades of debate and its previous rejection of membership in 1986 by a 31 popular vote. Women's suffrage in Switzerland was introduced by popular vote in 1971. An Equal Rights Amendment was ratified in 1981. Switzerland is not a member state of the EU, but has been, together with Liechtenstein, surrounded by EU territory since the joining of Austria in 1995. In 2005, Switzerland agreed to join the Schengen Treaty and Dublin Convention by popular vote. In February 2014, Swiss voters approved a referendum to reinstitute quotas on immigration to Switzerland, setting off a period of finding an implementation that would not violate the EU's freedom of movement accords that Switzerland adopted. This is the history of Switzerland. For more interesting and historic videos, like, share, and subscribe.